Global leaders are gathering in Munich this Friday for a security conference set to focus on EU-US ties, as well as other burning global issues, including Ukraine, Gaza and Iran. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has already spoken, urging attendees to rebuild fractured transatlantic trust. NATO chief Marco Rubio, meanwhile, speaking to the press ahead of the official opening of the event to say that a stronger role of Europe in NATO will happen. Both men, of course, responding to repeated criticism by the US that European nations are not pulling their weight in matters of NATO defence. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by our International Affairs Editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Hi, Kethevane. Now, a year after JD Vance's scathing speech in Munich and Donald Trump's repeated attacks on that transatlantic alliance, could this year's conference bring about a sort of reset, do we think?
Well, look, at least that is the rhetoric from Munich. People are using the word reset, de-escalation, reconciliation, and it does look like the tone, at least, is going to be much more conciliatory than it was last year. And that, in part, has to do with the choice as to who is going to lead the U.S. delegation out, with JD Vance in with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Why is that important? Well, for many Europeans, Marco Rubio is the more respectable, more reasonable, less ideologue face of the Trump administration. And he's also someone who has a long history with the Munich Security Conference from his past life as a senator. He was someone who was very hawkish, very much in favor of the strong transatlantic alliance, and one who was going to Munich very regularly. And so this is the sort of rebranding, if you will, the cosmetic appearance of it. But that said, Marco Rubio is still the messenger for the Trump administration, and the Trump administration's message to the Europeans has not changed. And that is in part shown by who is joining Marco Rubio on this trip. The Undersecretary of State, Sarah Rogers, she is a very harsh critic of Europe. Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense, he's the author of the U.S.'s national security strategy, one that is not very kind to the Europeans. And so Marco Rubio is expected to continue, maybe in more diplomatic terms, but to continue putting pressure on the Europeans. And you mentioned the Europeans not pulling their weight. That is going to be the key message. You need still to do more, especially when it comes to defense.
So how, Kethevane, are US allies, especially the Europeans, responding to that pressure?
Well, look, it's undeniable that Donald Trump's return to the White House, JD Vance's speech last year, the repeated attacks, whether it's through tariffs, whether it's on Greenland, or even simply the never-ending disparaging comments for the Europeans coming from Donald Trump and the rest of his administration, has sort of jolted the Europeans into taking action, into taking European security pretty seriously. And that's been really sort of clear with the push by many European leaders to develop and invest in a key European defense that is less dependent on the United States. Now, there's still a debate as to whether that has to be done completely separate for the United States or in partnership with the United States. And Friedrich Merz clearly showed where he stood on that. He said he wasn't writing off the United States as a partner, despite acknowledging that there was indeed uneasiness. There were doubts about the United States, but he didn't make a plea for a stronger Europe inside NATO that has its own security strategy, but that also works with the Americans. He did, however, also have a message not just for his European allies, but also for the United States. Take a listen.
In the era of great power rivalry, even the United States will not be powerful enough to go it alone. Dear friends, being a part of NATO is not only Europe's competitive advantage, it's also the United States' competitive advantage. So let's repair and revive transatlantic trust together. We, the Europeans, we are doing our part.
So Merz's message there is very clear to the Americans. we are doing our part. It's taking time, but we are investing more in our defense. But you also need to work with us. That's a subtle nod to the sort of aggressive messaging from the Trump administration. Let's wait now until Saturday morning. Marco Rubio will be speaking. We'll see if he has an answer to the Europeans and specifically to Friedrich Merz.
And we'll be covering this conference, of course, here on France 24 until its end. Kethevane Gorjestani, thank you very much.